The 2026 Formula One season has only had one race. Just one. And already the entire paddock is on edge. Because what happened after the Australian Grand Prix may have revealed something that could change the entire championship. Mercedes did not just win in Melbourne. They dominated. Pole position. The fastest car in practice. And a commanding 1-2 finish with George Russell and Kimi Antonelli. But the real shock came after the race ended. Because Ferrari and Red Bull both started saying the same thing. Mercedes may have discovered a massive performance advantage inside the new engine regulations. Charles Leclerc admitted Ferrari was nowhere near Mercedes in qualifying. And Max Verstappen openly said Red Bull is not the fastest team right now. When both of your biggest rivals say that after the first race of a brand new era, something big is happening. Some analysts now believe the Mercedes power unit could have around 30 extra horsepower compared to rival engines. 30 horsepower. In modern Formula One, that kind of advantage can decide an entire championship. And now the situation is escalating. Because the FIA has quietly started looking more closely at how Mercedes is extracting so much performance from the new hybrid regulations. Not because anyone has proven something illegal, but because when one team suddenly appears this dominant at the beginning of a new era, the governing body always investigates. So now the entire paddock is asking the same question. Did Mercedes simply build the best car of the new generation? Or did they discover something hidden inside the regulations that nobody else saw coming? Because if the answer is the second one, the tension that started after the Australian Grand Prix might only be the beginning of the biggest technical battle of the 2026 Formula One season. The moment the Australian Grand Prix ended, something unusual started happening inside the paddock. Teams were not just talking about the race. They were talking about Mercedes. Because the performance of the W17 in Melbourne did not look like a normal victory. It looked like a team that had already mastered the new era before anyone else even understood it. From the very first practice session, the Mercedes was fast. George Russell topped the timing sheets. In the final practice before qualifying, he set a 1 minute 19.053 lap, more than 0.6 faster than the closest Ferrari. That gap immediately caught attention. Because at the beginning of a brand new regulation cycle, the field is usually extremely tight. Teams are still learning. Still experimenting. Still trying to understand how to extract performance from the new hybrid systems. But Mercedes looked completely comfortable. Then came qualifying. And the gap became even more obvious. Russell delivered pole position with a 1 minute 18.518 lap. Almost 0.3 faster than Antonelli in the second Mercedes. A full front row lockout for the team. At that point, the rest of the paddock started realizing something serious might be happening. Because the W17 was not just fast in a straight line. It looked balanced, stable, extremely efficient when deploying electrical energy. And that is a huge factor under the 2026 regulations. The hybrid system now plays a much bigger role in the car's total performance. Which means the timing of electrical deployment can completely change how the car accelerates out of corners. During the race itself, the Mercedes advantage became even clearer. The start was messy. Both Russell and Antonelli struggled when the lights went out. Charles Leclerc managed to jump into the lead at the first corner. For several laps, the Ferrari and the Mercedes fought intensely at the front of the race. Overtakes. Counterattacks. Drivers constantly using the new attack mode introduced with the 2026 regulations. Every time Russell activated the overtake mode, he released extra electrical power from the battery. But that also meant burning energy, which made him vulnerable when the battery charge dropped and Leclerc could counterattack. It was a perfect demonstration of how the new hybrid rules are transforming the dynamics of racing. But everything changed when the first virtual safety car appeared. A Red Bull stopped on track with a mechanical failure. And Mercedes reacted instantly. Both cars entered the pit lane at the same time. A perfectly synchronized double pit stop. Ferrari decided to stay out on track. And that single decision completely changed the race. Because the Mercedes cars returned to the circuit with fresh tires while losing almost no time under the neutralized conditions. From that moment on, Russell controlled the race from the front. Managing tire wear. Managing battery deployment. And keeping the Ferrari drivers behind him without ever looking under real pressure. Antonelli's race told another impressive story. After crashing heavily during the final practice session, the team had to rebuild the rear of his car overnight. Yet somehow he still qualified second. And despite a poor start that dropped him down the order, the pace of the W17 allowed him to fight his way back to second place. The final result was clear. Russell first. Antonelli second. A perfect 1-2 finish for Mercedes. The ideal beginning to the new era of Formula One. But inside rival garages, the reaction was not admiration. It was concern. Because when engineers started analyzing the performance data from Melbourne, one possibility quickly began to circulate. Mercedes might have discovered something inside the new hybrid regulations that nobody else has managed to replicate yet. And if that theory turns out to be true, the tension we are now seeing across the Formula One paddock may only be the beginning. But the moment engineers from other teams started studying the data from Melbourne, the conversation inside the paddock changed completely. Because the more closely they looked at the Mercedes performance, the more one particular detail stood out. The power delivery of the W17. Not just how much power the car produced, but how it delivered that power. During the race, the Mercedes cars looked incredibly efficient when accelerating out of slow corners. Every time Russell or Antonelli exited a turn, the hybrid system released energy in a very controlled, very smooth burst. No hesitation. No sudden drop in deployment. Just a clean surge of acceleration. And under the 2026 regulations, that detail is incredibly important. Because the hybrid system now contributes a much larger percentage of the total power output of the car. Which means the timing of energy deployment can make the difference between a car that struggles out of corners and one that launches forward with incredible traction. Technical analysts studying the race believe Mercedes may have focused heavily on the harmony between the combustion engine and the electrical deployment system. Instead of chasing only raw horsepower, the team appears to have optimized how the energy flows through the entire power unit. How it is harvested. How it is stored. And most importantly, exactly when it is released. That level of integration is extremely difficult to achieve. And even harder for rival teams to replicate quickly. Because it is not just about building a stronger engine. It is about understanding the entire energy cycle of the car. Some analysts now believe Mercedes may have spent years refining the software models that control hybrid deployment. If those models allow the team to predict exactly when the tires can accept maximum power without losing traction, the result is exactly what we saw in Australia. Better acceleration. Better energy efficiency. And a car that feels incredibly stable during the most critical moments of the lap. But this is also why rival teams are becoming nervous. Because advantages like that are not easy to copy. If the performance comes from deep integration between software, battery management, and combustion efficiency, other manufacturers may need months of development to fully understand what Mercedes has done. And in a championship season, months can decide everything. Ferrari already admits that the gap is significant. Charles Leclerc openly said that Ferrari was nowhere near Mercedes during qualifying in Melbourne. Red Bull has taken a similar tone. Max Verstappen admitted that his team simply does not have the fastest package right now and that they need to find more performance if they want to fight for victories. When both Ferrari and Red Bull say the same thing after the very first race of a new era, the message becomes clear. Mercedes has started 2026 with a serious advantage. And that is exactly why the FIA is now watching the situation very carefully. Whenever one team appears to unlock a powerful interpretation of the regulations, the governing body always studies the situation closely. Not because innovation is forbidden. Innovation is the heart of Formula One. But because sometimes teams discover gray areas in the rulebook that regulators did not fully anticipate. And if those interpretations create too large an advantage, the FIA may eventually introduce technical clarifications. For now, there is no official protest against Mercedes. No confirmed rule violation. But the tension inside the paddock is growing. Ferrari engineers are studying the Mercedes data. Red Bull is analyzing every detail of the power unit behavior. And the FIA is quietly reviewing the technical aspects of the new hybrid regulations. Because if the dominance we saw in Australia appears again in the next races, the questions surrounding the Mercedes power unit will only grow louder. And what started as a perfect victory in Melbourne could quickly become the biggest technical investigation of the entire 2026 Formula One season. But the moment the race in Australia ended, the tension inside the paddock became impossible to ignore. Because Ferrari and Red Bull were not just impressed by Mercedes. They were concerned. Very concerned. Charles Leclerc was one of the first drivers to say it openly. After qualifying, he admitted that Ferrari was simply nowhere near the pace of the Mercedes. Even if Ferrari executed the perfect lap, he believed the gap would still be significant. And according to him, the reason was obvious. Mercedes had found an enormous amount of performance in the engine. That statement immediately changed the tone of the conversation inside the paddock. Because when a Ferrari driver openly admits that another manufacturer has unlocked huge power inside a brand new engine formula, engineers start asking very serious questions. Inside Maranello, the suspicion had already existed for months. Even before the season began, some analysts believed Mercedes might have discovered a clever interpretation of the new hybrid regulations. Possibly something related to compression ratios. Possibly something involving energy deployment strategies. And after seeing the performance of the W17 in Melbourne, those suspicions suddenly felt much more real. Some technical analysts now believe the Mercedes power unit could have roughly 30 extra horsepower compared with rival manufacturers. 30 horsepower may not sound dramatic to casual fans. But in Formula One, it is enormous. That kind of advantage can mean stronger acceleration out of every slow corner, higher top speed on every straight, and much greater flexibility when deploying electrical energy during the lap. Which is exactly what observers noticed in Australia. Every time the Mercedes cars exited a corner, they seemed to gain speed slightly earlier than the cars around them. That early acceleration then translated into a bigger advantage down the straight. Red Bull has been studying this very carefully. Max Verstappen did not accuse Mercedes of doing anything illegal. But his words still carried a lot of weight. Because he openly admitted that Red Bull simply does not have the fastest car right now. And if the team wants to fight for victories this season, they will need to find much more performance. For a driver who dominated large parts of the previous era, that admission is extremely revealing. Because Verstappen rarely accepts being behind without a fight. If he says another team has the advantage, it usually means the difference is real. And that is exactly why the FIA is now paying close attention. Whenever a team appears to unlock a major performance advantage at the start of a new regulation era, the governing body always takes a deeper look. Not because innovation is illegal. Formula One thrives on innovation. But because sometimes teams discover gray areas inside the rules that regulators did not fully anticipate. If those interpretations create too large a performance gap, the FIA may eventually issue technical clarifications to restore competitive balance. For Mercedes, this situation creates a strange mix of celebration and pressure. On one hand, the team delivered the perfect opening weekend. Pole position, race victory, and a dominant 1-2 finish. George Russell even joked on the radio after crossing the finish line that he loved the car and loved the engine, clearly enjoying the performance of the W17.